sort of have to put that in context. Teddy Bridgewater, not a guy you're going to consider starting, but he's also smart enough to get the ball to his playmakers in space. And when you've got guys like Tyreek Hill and like Jalen Waddle, just get the ball in their hands, let them use their speed, and let them make some plays. All right, last burning question here. How should fantasy managers treat Kenny Pickett?
I think with like kids' gloves or like a wait-and-see approach. Like Kenny Pickett is someone that I have on rosters in Superflex or 2 quarterback format leagues, but in like a standard 1 QB league, I think he's best left on the waiver wire right now. I'm excited for Pickett, but more so because what it means for the rest of the guys. Like Mitch Trubisky wasn't getting the job done for fantasy or real life, so at least Pickett is exciting. He's a little bit more aggressive. I think the ceiling of his playmakers around him is higher, but like I'm not looking to start him against the Bills, and they do have a tough schedule moving forward.
Kenny Pickett, you're right, not a guy that you're going to consider starting. I just am hoping he gets the ball to all the guys who can make plays. I want to see Deontay Johnson still being involved. I know you like George Pickens as well. I just want to see what he can do, but look, you're not starting him. You're not even starting him in 2 QB leagues or Superflex leagues, anything like that. So just kind of take a wait-and-see attitude on it, but hopefully it does mean more offensively for the Steelers than Mitch Trubisky did at quarterback. Time to take another break. We still got plenty left here to do on the show. Kirk Cousins getting loose for the Minnesota Vikings. Stick around. We got sleepers coming next. Jalen Waddle, not a sleeper. We all know about him. We know what he can do. It must be pretty warm there in New York. Or
he practices penguin walk?
Tough. The shorts look for Jalen Waddle in mid-October. Stick around. We got more coming up on NFL Fantasy Game Day, presented by Geico. Marcus Mariota and the Atlanta Falcons with a big one today against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Winner of this game takes sole possession of first place in the NFC South. But no Kyle Pitts for the Falcons, so they will have to do it down one of their big weapons. I say one of their big weapons, but he hasn't really been involved all that much
unfortunately
so far this season. So we'll see what they can do with just Drake London and company and Tyler Algier in the backfield for Atlanta today. Welcome back to NFL Fantasy Game Day, presented by Geico. I am Marcus. He is Michael. We're still keeping an eye on what's going on over there in London. You can keep sending us your questions at NFL Fantasy, trying to get to as many of them as we can throughout the course of the show. In fact, do we have a couple lined up right now? I think we do. This one for you. Do I start Waddle with Teddy at the helm, or do I start Devonta Smith
Ooh, I think I'd go Devonta Smith there. I still have them ranked very, very closely, but the thing is, I just trust Jalen Hurts a lot more than I trust Teddy Bridgewater.
I think that's the factor for me, especially against that Cardinals defense.
Yeah.
Just everything about it. The Eagles offense seems like it'd be in a better place. Christian Kirk or Robert Woods? Ooh. This is a lot spicier now than I thought it would have been at the start of the season. I still think I go with Christian Kirk. I just think the Jaguars have a slightly better passing game. Although I know you like Ryan Tannehill. I like Ryan Tannehill. I've got Robert Woods in my sleepers column this week. So it's a tough call, but I think I'm going to lean toward Christian Kirk in this one against the Houston Texans. But that's a tough question. It's a good problem to have for you right now. Let's take a look at some of the actives and inactives for Week 5. This in the early games. Alvin Kamara is active. David Montgomery is back. Julio Jones inactive for the Buccaneers. Mentioned Amon-Ra St. Brown. He is back and active again this week. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, both expected to go for the Miami Dolphins in their game against the Metropolitans. And some of the late game injuries to monitor. Boston Scott is questionable with a rib. Then a whole slew of guys expected to play. Tony Pollard and CeeDee Lamb for the Cowboys, playing right next door to us at SoFi Stadium. Rondale Moore expected to go for the Cardinals against Philadelphia. And T. Higgins and Hayden Hurst both expected to play for the Bengals against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, we are talking about that Lions and Patriots game because the Lions scored a lot of points. They give up a lot of points. Should be an interesting one. We'll see whether or not Jared Goff can get over on Bill Belichick, who shut him down in the Super Bowl a few years ago. Mike Giardi is there in Foxborough, and he's got the latest for us.
A year ago, Hunter Henry was one of the Patriots' most consistent receivers, someone that Mac Jones went to early and often. In fact, he had about a 10-game stretch where he was as good as any tight end in the National Football League. This year, however, for whatever reason, despite running plenty of routes, he has not received many targets. Perhaps that changes with Bailey Zappi at quarterback. Zappi looked to him several times during that loss at Green Bay when Zappi came in. Maybe Henry breaks out today. As for the Lions, Jamal Williams, right? DeAndre Swift once again down and out. Williams, physical, powerful. They will test this Patriot run defense that struggled against Green Bay.
So the Detroit Lions, mentioned Amon-Ra St. Brown is back, but no DeAndre Swift, no DJ Chark this week. We still like them, knowing Bill Belichick's track record against Jared Goff, knowing how Belichick's defenses can sometimes perform.
I still like the Lions this week. Jared Goff's been playing great ball. All of the Lions offense really has been this year. Jamal Williams has been running it well. And the Patriots offense, they're in the top 10 right now in most fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. And that's with a pretty favorable schedule so far this year. So I'm going to trust the league MVP in Jared Goff right now.
I love that we're just crowning him the MVP after 4+ weeks of the season, but he has been that good. I want to ask on the other side, though. I know that on our podcast earlier in the week, you said, hey, look, stream everybody against the Detroit Lions. We're putting that to the test this week because both you and I kind of staked our claim to Bailey Zappi as a deep sleeper this week. All right, maybe that's not going to be super great. My bold prediction, he's a top 10 quarterback. I also know that's really bold and might not happen. But in terms of their pieces, the running backs, even the wide receivers, I mean, how much do we like them today?
Yeah, this is the ultimate battle of the team that gives up the most fantasy production versus the offense that has the least fantasy production. I think with the Patriots, both running backs are in play. Stevenson catching the passes, Harris being a touchdown scorer like you've been talking about all week. I think Hunter Henry is like a sleeper tight end. I don't love the receivers in this one, especially with Jacoby Myers back. It's just a little bit more crowded now. And then Zappi, sleeper if you're in a 2-quarterback or super flex league.
If you are in a 2-quarterback or super flex league, maybe you consider him on your roster. The Patriots offense against the Lions defense is the classic case of stoppable force against movable object. We'll see who ends up winning in that one. Let's move along to some fantasy insurance presented by Geico. These are the moves that can make or break your lineup. Basically, we're talking about some sleepers. So, Florio, who do you have here?
George Pickens, I think, is someone that needs to get more love in fantasy football right now. I think this guy is a alpha, wide receiver 1 type talent. I think he would have went higher in the draft if not for injury and some off-the-field concerns. But what I like is he's been more utilized after that great TNF catch. He was more used last week than we've seen him since he's started in the NFL. Was the top target for Kenny Pickett in a small sample size as well. Pickett's throwing the ball downfield more than Trubisky was, at least in that small sample. And then the Bills' secondary is very banged up.
Pickett to Pickens in Pittsburgh seems to be becoming a thing. At least we're hoping it becomes a thing. My sleeper for the week is Robert Woods, and you just saw the question we had just a little bit ago about do you start Christian Kirk or Robert Woods, and it was a tough call for me because I do like Robert Woods a lot this week. He is starting to get some more opportunities from Ryan Tannehill. He has been the top target the last couple of weeks. In fact, the passing game has pretty much run through Robert Woods and Derrick Henry. On top of it, the Commanders have been giving up big plays to wide receivers 4 times this year. They've allowed a receiver to have a top 20 finish. In 3 of those weeks, that receiver has finished within the top 8. So I do like Robert Woods to have certainly a high-end wide receiver 2 finish and maybe on the upper end, potentially a low-end wide receiver 1 finish as well. So it has just gone final over in London. The Giants and the Packers. We got some highlights for you of what we saw over at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. First quarter, Packers leading it by a score of 3-0 already. Quick throw out to Allen Lazard, and he finds his way into the end zone. Packers go up with a 10-0 lead at that point, and it looked like maybe Green Bay was starting to get some things going offensively. The Giants riddled with injuries, struggling to get anything going. And it's 10-3 Green Bay. And it's the London legend, Mercedes Lewis, scoring another touchdown. Remember a few years ago, he had 3 touchdowns in a game for the Jaguars playing over in London. Maybe Lewis is just worth more over in the UK. Then some trickeration from the Giants, down 17-3. A double reverse to Daniel Bellinger. He bowls it across the goal line, gets the Giants on the board, makes it 17-10 at that point. Then 20-13 Green Bay, and it's Gary Brightwell that bowls his way into the end zone. At that point, Saquon Barkley had been out of the game, was dealing with a minor injury. He would come back later on, but Brightwell gets the touchdown. Tied at 20. There is the aforementioned Barkley. The Saquon-assance continues. He gets into the end zone, puts the Giants ahead 27-20. The Packers trying to come back, trying to tie things up. 4th down and 2. Aaron Rodgers' pass batted up in the air, falls incomplete. And that would seem to have been the last gasp for Green Bay. But the Giants could not completely run out the clock. You see Aaron Rodgers bummed there on the sidelines. The Giants couldn't run out the clock. They actually had to take a safety, gave it back to the Packers. One last chance for a Hail Mary. Aaron Rodgers was sacked. And that is how the Giants survive. The Giants 27-22 winners over in London. New York is 4-1. How did this happen?
I think they all slapped like the Believe sign from Ted Lasso or something like that, because I have no idea how. Like, they came back in a game where their wide receivers were dudes that I'm pretty sure they were just like, hey, you want to catch a couple passes from Daniel Jones? I don't know how it's happening in New York, but they just beat a legit Super Bowl contender.
They beat the Green Bay Packers with, you mentioned, a hodgepodge of wide receivers. At one point, Saquon was out of the game. For a while, the longest play from scrimmage that the Giants had was a wildcat run. They give an end around to Daniel Bellinger. I don't know how they're doing it, but kudos to Brian Daboll and the New York Giants. They have made it to 4-1, and now I feel like we really have to start taking them seriously. We have to take them seriously as a team. Fantasy-wise, though, it's still pretty much the Saquon show there.
It's Saquon, and that's it. Like, I know we had to start Daniel Jones in like a super flex league.
We weren't happy about it.
Yeah, it's really Saquon. I'm still gonna hold out hope for Kadarius Toney and Wan'Dale Robinson whenever they return. I think they're players you could grab off the waiver wire and maybe see, because I think they have some upside. But right now, I don't know how they're getting it done. It's a mix of Saquon being great, their defense playing really well, but for fantasy, it's Saquon, and that's it.
That is really it. The wide receivers are a mess. You mentioned Kadarius Toney, still injured. Kenny Galladay injured. They've lost Sterling Shepard for the year. At one point, they were running 3 tight ends out on the field. I couldn't tell you the names really of any of them. Daniel Jones has been just mediocre at best, but it's working for the Giants. It's not great for fantasy, but as long as Saquon continues to do his thing, you're starting him each and every week. He looks like he's on path to finish, certainly as a top 3 running back, maybe even the running back 1 overall, depending on how things shake out. But there it is. Giants beat the Packers 27-22 in London. Earlier in the show, we asked you on Twitter about some early round running backs that could break out this year. Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Najee Harris were the 3 options. And right now, it's Dalvin Cook by a hair in this one. It is the Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara show.
Poor Najee.
Does that mean people just don't believe in Najee this year?
I guess. I don't know why. I mean, I understand that, like, he's not getting the dump-offs like he was with Big Ben Roethlisberger, but still, like, this is a game where I think Najee Harris, I think he's going to be early on the focal point of their offense.
Well, and the thing about Najee is that he never comes off the field. They don't have any other running backs. They will trust him in the passing game. You know he's going to get the carries. It's just a matter of him breaking out. Maybe it is a function of the quarterback, too, between Trubisky and Pickett. Maybe people just don't believe. But Najee running far behind Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara in that one. You can keep voting, though. Just go to NFL Fantasy on Twitter. You can cast your vote in this poll here in Week 5. Time for another break. When we come back, we've got some flex starts, guys, you want to have in that little flexible spot. That's why they call it a flex spot, because it's running back, wide receiver, maybe tight end. Damian Pierce there getting loose, and we got a little Garrett Wilson action as the Jets and the Dolphins get ready to tangle. Must be pretty warm. I see you take flight back there. They're in New York. People are wearing shorts. Weather kind of nice there in the Big Apple, or guys just pretending to be tough. Either way, I dig it. Stick around for more NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico. Tom Brady suited up and leading his Buccaneers teammates out onto the field for what is an early season key game against the Atlanta Falcons. And Jalen Waddle looks like he is ready to go for the Dolphins. Maybe he will give us his signature touchdown dance if he can find the end zone today against the New York Jets. Big win for Miami as well. Trying to keep it going without Tua Tagovailoa in the lineup and Teddy Bridgewater under center. Welcome back to NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico. I'm Marcus, that's Mike. We can always take your questions like we normally do on the Twitter machine at NFL Fantasy. In fact, we got a couple of them right now. So the first one is for you, Florio. Let's pull this one up here. We got, okay, Mike Williams or DK Metcalf in the flex.
This is a humble brag because I like both of these guys, but I'm going to go with Mike Williams there. I trust Justin Herbert a little bit more than I trust Geno Smith in a tough matchup.
Yeah, the matchup is tough for the Seahawks this week. All right, next one. Mark Spike asking Justin Herbert or Tom Brady. Again, it's a bit of a flex right here. Look at my two quarterbacks. I'm going to say you go with Tom Brady, though, this week. I like his matchup a little bit better against the Atlanta Falcons. He is 10-0 in his career against the Falcons and always seems to have pretty big games against them. So keep firing your questions away. We will try to get to as many as we can before the show is over. But for now, let's turn our attention to flex starts. Those guys, you know, those sort of hybrid guys, wide receiver, running back, maybe even a tight end that you can plug into certain spots in your lineup. So for you, who's your favorite flex start this week?
I'm going to give the Patriots some love. I know that's rare for me.
Weird.
I think Ramondre Stevenson is 100% in play as a flex option this week. I'm starting him everywhere that I have him. He leads the team in touches and scrimmage yards in the last 2 weeks. He's been getting more and more targets, which I think is huge because even if they fall behind, he remains in the game. And then the Lions, they've allowed a ton of fantasy points and a ton of touchdowns, the most touchdowns in the NFL to running backs. So fire up Ramondre Stevenson today.
Definitely think both Patriots backs are in play. Damian Harris is a good start as well. For me, I'm going to pick one of your Buffalo Bills, and I'm going to take Devin Singletary, who really has taken the lead in that backfield there in Buffalo, playing the majority of the snaps, about 70% of the snaps this year. Last week played about 87% of the snaps, so he's getting all the work there, and as long as this game stays close, which is certainly possible, he's going to see the work. The only time we're seeing Zach Moss or James Cook is when the games have gotten out of hand. The target share will be there, the rushing opportunities will be there, and maybe, who knows, he'll be allowed to score a touchdown this week as well. So I definitely like Devin Singletary against the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, it is time now for Who Scores, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. The Chargers getting ready to take on the Browns in Cleveland, where I think the Rays and Guardians might have just wrapped up after their game on Saturday.
They finally scored a run?
They finally scored a run. It finally happened, believe it or not. We're going to take a look at the running back battle, though, and make some predictions. Let's start with Sir Nicholas Chubb. DraftKings projects Chubb to rush for 90.5 rushing yards. Where do you have him?
I have him going over that. I'm going to give him 115 rushing yards right there. I'm going to give him just one touchdown, and I think I have him for
he lost a
just no, he gets that touchdown and 21 fantasy points, I'll say. I think Nick Chubb has just been going off this year. The Chargers are a defense that you can run against, so and he is their offense when they get near the goal line. So I think Chubb, if you have him, he's a top 5 fantasy running back for me this week.
All right, Nick Chubb, a guy that I love. I put him, if you watch the Fantasy Start Sit show, I put him in Club Dub this week. So you have to kind of shortchange him. I said he's going to get 25. But either way, 21, 25 points, pretty good day from Nick Chubb. Austin Eckler is projected to get 52.5 rushing yards and 38.5 receiving yards. I'm going to do some quick math. That is, what, 91 yards? Anyway, how do you think he's going to fare?
He's going over that. He's going for, I'm going to give him for 127 total yards. Because, you know, we have to go scrimmage with Austin Eckler because of how much he's used in the passing game. Marcus, hit me with an air guitar because we're getting that today from Austin Eckler. We're going to, not 3 like last week, we're going to get at least 1. And then I have him for 25 fantasy points. So he's getting into Club Dub. He's getting that 25. And I think he's going to build off of what he did last week. Early in the season, he was limited on the ground, but he was heavily involved in the passing game. We saw him break out with the 3-touchdown game last week. I still think he is their goal line runner here. I feel really good about Austin Eckler if you have him in this matchup.
And I'm sure for Eckler, obviously it's great for him to score touchdowns. It helps the Chargers win. It also probably makes his podcast life a little bit easier. He doesn't have to answer questions about, like, hey, so what's going on with the offense? So Austin Eckler hopefully having another great podcast with our pal, Matt Harmon. Get in on the hottest sports action for your shot at cold, hard cash with DraftKings Sportsbook. Bet on your favorite sports all season long and gear up for football season. Right now, new customers can get a special offer when they sign up using promo code WHOSCORES. Time for a break. The Houston Texans trying to keep things going. Brandon Cooks getting ready to go for Houston against the Jacksonville Jaguars down in Duval today. And Teddy Bridgewater, who was taken over, at least temporarily, as the starting quarterback of the Miami Dolphins. Looking good in that teal there. We'll see if he can spread it around to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and help the Dolphins get a dub against the Jets. We got plenty left to do here on the show. Be sure to stick around for more of NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico. Mr. Kenneth Pickett getting ready to get the start for the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Buffalo Bills. I don't even know if his real name is actually Kenneth. I'm going to guess so. Let's see. Kennifer. Yes, I like that. That can be the one. And Zachary Wilson. Zach Wilson. He will take snaps from under center for the Jets today against the Miami Dolphins. Jets kind of feisty, still looking to kind of put some things together, but we like their pieces overall in fantasy. Welcome back to NFL Fantasy Game Day. It's 15 minutes to kickoff, presented by Geico. Take another look at some of the early game injuries to keep an eye on. Alvin Kamara is back after some rib issues. He's active today. David Montgomery is back for the Bears after dealing with an ankle injury. Julio Jones not back. He's still dealing with a knee injury there. Amon-Ra St. Brown is active for the Lions. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle dealing with nagging injuries during the week, but they will suit up and play for the Miami Dolphins today against the New York Jets. All right, back here on NFL Fantasy Game Day, presented by Geico. I'm Marcus. That is Michael. You can keep sending us your questions at NFL Fantasy. We got about 9. I can do more than that. 11 minutes, I should say, until kickoff. I can do math. I know it's hard, but I can do it. Trust me. And we'll still have Aaron making him answer some of those questions there.
Not eating broccoli.
Because he doesn't eat fruits or vegetables. If you had a balanced diet, Aaron, you could get out of this. It's easy. Try a salad. We're gonna eat some questions here right now, though. This one for you from Alejandro. Who's at tight end? Hill, Freiermuth, Conklin, or Njoku?
I was like, this is a really close question until you got to that last name. I think David Njoku is very much the play here. I have him ranked as a top 5 tight end. He's just been getting a lot of usage as a top 2 target for the Browns. And I think they'll have to throw this week, so that's good things for David Njoku.
I do like to see Tyler Conklin getting some love in these, though, because I feel like he's been kind of overlooked so far this season. This one from Vittles79, McLaurin or Breece Hall in a PPR. I'm going to ride with Terry McLaurin here, and I know it hasn't been a great start to the season. We talked about this earlier in the show. We've seen a lot of Curtis Samuel. Jahan Dotson is scoring touchdowns. We're still waiting on that Terry McLaurin breakout game, but I think there's a chance it could happen this week. I expect that the Commanders are going to throw the football a lot, and I'd like to see he and Carson Wentz connect on some of these downfield throws. I know Breece Hall is getting some work, and he's been very nice so far, but I think the ceiling for Terry McLaurin is higher than it is for Breece Hill. So I'm going to go with that one. That, I understand the dilemma on that one for you. All right. It's time for Sunday Funday. There it is. There's the air horns. There's the reggae horns there. We're going to go through and talk about some of the superlatives for Week 5. Let's start with the top scorer of the week this week, and who do you think it's going to be?
It's going to make you wait a little bit, but it's going to be worth the wait on Sunday Night Football for Mr. Joe Burrow against the Baltimore Ravens, who right now, the Ravens are in the top 5 in fantasy points, passing yards, touchdowns, and rushing touchdowns allowed to quarterbacks. But really, Joe Burrow's been playing better ball the last couple of weeks. His O-line has been giving him time, and that's a scary thought considering he threw for almost 1,000 yards and 7 scores against them last year. I think this is going to be a really high-scoring game tonight.
I do think that's going to be a high-scoring game. But for me, my top scorer, look, there are different people who like seeing the Raiders on the schedule. 1, Raider fans. 2, Patrick Mahomes. He likes seeing the Raiders on the schedule. He seems to have some of his big games against the silver and black, and I think that's going to be another case here. I said earlier, I think the Raiders are going to try to run the football and keep Mahomes on the sideline. I don't think it's going to matter. I think they're starting to find their stride a little bit. We know Travis Kelce is going to be involved, but I expect to see some other guys get involved, whether it's Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I just think Mahomes is going to continue to work his dark magic, and I think he's going to be the high scorer of the week. Since we're talking quarterbacks, who is a must-start quarterback for you today?
Mr. Jared Goff. I'm going to go with Jared Goff here, who has been the QB5 on the season. He's the only quarterback with multiple 4 passing touchdown games. And I know the Patriots might scare you. They're in the top 10 in fantasy points allowed. And quarterbacks have been disappointing. So, like, if you drafted Matthew Stafford or Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins, someone like that, I would play Jared Goff over all of those guys this week.
Jared Goff has been surprisingly great so far this season. We'll see if he keeps it going. Meanwhile, Tom Brady is getting back into the swing of things. He had a rough first couple of weeks, but some of that can be owed to the fact that his wide receivers were hurt, or like Mike Evans being suspended for a week. All those guys are coming back and getting healthy right now. On top of it, the matchup is great. So this feels like Tom Brady's about ready to roll for the next few weeks or so. Not that you were sitting him, because I don't know that you have a better option on your roster. You are for sure starting Tom Brady this week against the Falcons. Must start running back for week 5. What say you?
You spoke about him earlier, but I think Josh Jacobs is 100% in play this week. What I love, yes, they've been feeding him a bunch on the ground, but he has 11 targets in the last 2 games. And like you said, Patrick Mahomes loves playing the Chiefs, the Raiders. I'll get that team right eventually. And if they're going to put up points on the Raiders, you feel comfortable knowing that Josh Jacobs isn't going to be game scripted out of the game. So I think that with the amount of touches he's getting and the fact that the Chiefs have struggled against running backs this year, he is a very strong play.
And we've both apologized to Josh Jacobs in the last week, so we have made our amends there. Dameon Pierce is a guy that I like to be in lineups this week. Now, I know we had that question about starting him. There were a couple other guys that I do like more, but I still think Pierce is in line for a big game. I just like the fact that the Texans have decided they are going to use him very heavily in their lineup. After week 1, we've seen Rex Burkhead sort of fade away, and it's become the Dameon Pierce show. The Jaguars, a couple weeks ago, had the #1 run defense in the NFL. Then they ran up on the Philadelphia Eagles, and that sort of got shredded. So I think you're going to see Dameon Pierce get a lot of opportunities. And if they start working him more and more into the passing game, that only adds to his upside. So I do like him this week against Jacksonville. Turning to the wide receiver position, looking at must-starts there, who needs to be in the lineup?
Mr. Chris Godwin should be started everywhere you have him. And I know I was a little trepidatious about him coming into the season, but last week he was second in snaps behind only Mike Evans, tied with Evans for the most targets. His work is back to where we want it to be, and I think he can only get better and better as he gets stronger. And then the Falcons are a defense that you can pick on, and we've talked about it a lot this week, Marcus. Brady has a huge history of success against them, and I mean, 2 losses in a row. Brady's going to be a little bit angry today.
A little bit salty, I think. So for the Falcons, I'm sorry about the timing. It's not a good time to show up on Tom Brady's schedule. For me, it's going to be Mr. Cedarian Lamb. You know him better as CD for the Dallas Cowboys. They'll be playing right next door to us over at SoFi Stadium. And early in the season, we would have thought, you know, the Rams are maybe a matchup we don't really want to mess with. But here, heading into week 5, you look and they have been victimized by opposing wide receivers. I mean, most notably that long catch and run by Deebo Samuel last week. But he's not the only one that's been able to get over on the Rams. I think CD Lamb is another guy who can. We've seen him get plenty of targets. The production hasn't been huge, although last week was certainly very nice. But we know that Cooper Rush is looking in his direction, and that is important. If they continue to move him around the formation, make it tough to defend, I think we can see CD Lamb continue to prosper. If he can just get those touchdown numbers up, I think we feel a whole lot better about him over the course of the season. Must start tight end. And this guy's becoming pretty much a lock in your lineup every week.
I'm starting him over George Kittle this week. I was already going to start him over Kyle Pitts before he was ruled out. David Njoku, I said earlier on the show when there was a question that I think he is a must-start guy. He's in my top 5 tight ends. 7 or more targets, 5 or more catches, 70 or more yards in 2 straight games. And he has a history of success against the Chargers, 21 fantasy points per game. He scored a touchdown in all 3 games against them. Shout out to researcher Laquan Jones for pointing that out for us.
Yeah, Laquan was all over that. We've given him several kudos for the work he's put in, giving us that information. So you said you'd start David Njoku over George Kittle. I would still start George Kittle this week, and this isn't just wish casting, although maybe it's a little bit wish casting, but I do think George Kittle is going to get some opportunities. The Panthers have been soft on tight ends, and especially last week we saw against the Arizona Cardinals, it was Zach Ertz going for 6 catches, 47 yards and a touchdown. Maybe not bananas numbers, but that's still double-digit fantasy points. And right now, unless you've got, say, Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews, that's really what you're looking for out of a tight end. Don't love the fact that the target share has been low for George Kittle, but I do think that Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers are going to start to work him into the offense. Look, Kittle is not the elite tight end lately that we thought he was coming into the season, but the upside is still there. The ceiling is still high for George Kittle, and this feels like a week that you want to make sure he is in your lineup. And let's go with the defenses. A must-start defense for you this week.
I'm going to give your Niners some shine here. The 49ers defense, I think, is an absolute must-play this week. I have them as a top 5 defense. They're looking like their old selves. Like this is the best the Niners defense has looked, I think, since their Super Bowl run a couple years ago. And then it's the Panthers.
Yeah.
It's Baker Mayfield. You want to play defenses against this offense.
Yeah, I think you could have just started with that. Like, they're playing the Panthers, and the Panthers' offense is bad. Plus, the Niners' defense is playing good, so it does feel like a great matchup. I'm going to go with the Dallas Cowboys. And again, I said earlier, we wouldn't have thought to pick on the Cowboys or the Rams' defense. I don't think we thought at the start of the year to pick on the Rams' offense, but right now, it is a mess. They continually are shuffling their offensive line. They're struggling with heavy pass rushes. Now they got to try to deal with Micah Parsons and that Cowboys pass rush. And we have seen that when Matthew Stafford gets pressure, he becomes very tunnel vision, and everything goes to Cooper Kupp and or Tyler Higbee. This offense is very predictable. They can't run the football, and I think this is a chance for the Cowboys to come in here to Los Angeles and really wreck shop and cause some havoc. And until the Rams get it figured out, I think with at least a decent defense, I think you can sort of pick on them as a streaming option. Never thought that was going to be the case. That gets us to our bold predictions for Week 5, our chance to get a little bit nutty and see what kind of weird creations we can come up with in the laboratory. So for you, what is your bold prediction for this week?
I think Gabe Davis makes up for the last couple of weeks and finishes as a wide receiver 1. I talked up Shakir as a, waiver wire sleeper you can grab if you're in need of a wide receiver, but I think with the Bills being so limited, no Dawson Knox, they really only have 3 healthy receivers who have been on the roster all year right now. I think it's going to be a lot of targets to Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, and Gabe Davis is the one that Josh Allen's been using downfield, so I expect a long catch, maybe a touchdown. I think this is the Gabe Davis's coming out party after a couple of weird weather games the last 2 weeks.
We're going to see, if that happens, we're going to see a lot of the Gabe Davis truthers taking victory laps this week, if that turns out to be the case. For me, I'm going deep. We're going to get zapped. Zappy. Don't worry, be zappy. All of that. I think Bailey Zappi is going to be a top 10 quarterback this week. That is my bold prediction. We keep saying the Lions' offense is great, the Lions' defense is terrible, but the Patriots' defense hasn't been great the last couple of weeks either. They've given up a combined 64 total points with 6 passing touchdowns. That means the Lions can move the ball potentially, score some points, which means Bailey Zappi might have to be more involved than Bill Belichick might want. They might have to throw the football a whole lot more. And if that's the case, the Lions defense is certainly vulnerable. So Bailey Zappi could be in play this week. Definitely, if you're playing 2 QB leagues. All right, let's take a final look at our poll. Which early round running back will finally break out this week? Dalvin Cook is your winner, edging out Alvin Kamara. Najee Harris coming in a distant third there. A little bit of a surprise. That'll do it for us. Enjoy Week 5. We'll talk to you next week.
2020, and the Packers add to the lead.
Well, watch Mercedes Lewis right here make a quick little block, and then he's going to leak out into the flat.
Second and 7, the direct snap to Barkley, trying to get to the edge. Oh, he sidled through an opening, and Saquon Barkley, great speed. Barkley inside the 40. The big play the Giants have been craving comes from the big playmaker. Put it into the end zone late in this first half. Here's Barkley, another end around. Wanting to throw, Bellinger's going to keep it. Long snapper, Pat O'Donnell the holder, Mason Crosby the kick from 46, and it's a 3-0 Packer lead for the Packers at the 4-yard line. Lazard, touchdown, Green Bay.
But watch Dobbs on the block, and then you're just going to get a quick little bubble on the edge, and he's just out leveraged so quickly on defense, and then it's just a foot right. Anytime he's got open space, he's got a chance.
Graham Gano from 48 to try to get the Giants on the board, and the field goal is good, and New York on the board down 10-3. We're back in third.
They take out Tate Crowder and Jalen Smith. They want to throw the ball when those guys are in.
Fake, Rodgers wide open! Mercedes Lewis, his first catch of the year and his first touchdown since 2020. And the Packers add to the lead.
Well, watch Mercedes Lewis right here make a quick little block, and then he's going to leak out into the flat.
Second and 7, the direct snap to Barkley, trying to get to the edge. Oh, he sidled through an opening, and Saquon Barkley, great speed. Barkley inside the 40. The big play the Giants have been craving comes from the big play.